In this video, we will show how to do the questions in Module 1 of the math portion of the SAT practice test number 3, published by the College Board. You can find the questions in this video by finding the practice test online. The test is published by the College Board. You can search College Board SAT practice tests or paper practice tests in an internet browser, or you can go directly to the website you see on this screen. A link to this website will be in the description of the video. I will also link a PDF to the practice test in the description of the video. As an addition to this video, I have to state that as of February of 2025, Test 3 is no longer available on the SAT Suite College Board website, but there is still a link to that practice test in the description of the video, and it, along with solutions, can be found in various places online if you just search those things in your internet browser. Once you download the SAT practice test number 3, it'll look like this. It starts out with a reading and writing portion, and it has 2 reading and writing modules. Then the math modules come. The math modules start here on page 30. Module 1 begins on page 30. The first page of this module has a formula sheet, a fact sheet. The second page describes how to format and write the answers. Then the questions start. Let's do these questions. I will be talking over and doing them on this document here. Question 1. What is the solution to the given equation? We have the equation K plus $12 is equal to 336. Sorry, K plus 12 is equal to 336. In order to solve this, I would subtract 12 from both sides. When we subtract 12 from both sides, we get K is equal to 324. So the answer to problem number 1 is B, 324. Question 2. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x raised to the 3rd power plus 15. What is the value of f of 2? F of 2 is what we get when we plug in 2 into the x portion of the output. So we're going to get, 2 raised to the 3rd power, or 2 cubed, plus 15. You can type that in to your calculator and you'll see that that becomes 23, or you could do that manually as well. That's 8 plus 15, which is 23. So the answer to question number 2 is C, 23. Question 3. Sean rents a tent at a cost of $11 per day plus a one-time insurance fee of $10. What equation represents the total cost to rent the tent with insurance for D days? So here's the deal. The total cost is going to ask us for writing the cost as C. Well, $11 per day means 11 times the number of days that we rent the tent, or that Sean rents the tent. And then it's a one-time insurance fee. So they add 10 to that. So 11D plus 10 is going to be the cost for a D-day rental. And that's option C. C equals 11D plus 10 is the correct answer to question 3. Question 4. In the figure shown, line M is parallel to line N. What is the value of X? Well, parallel lines are going to meet a cross line at same angles. So if we're doing this, what we can see is that this angle, which is at 26 degrees, is going to be the same as this angle. So this angle is also going to be 26 degrees. Or you could do it the other way where it's X, this angle X here has to be the same as this X. So in either situation, what we're getting is that X plus 26 degrees is on the same line. X plus 26 has to be equal to 180 because we know that the number of degrees in a straight line is going to be 180. So when you subtract 26 from 180, you end up with 154. So that gives me X equals 154. I know that's at the bottom. So X equals 154 is what we're looking for. And that's answer D. 154 is the correct answer for question 4. Question 5. John paid a total of $165 for a microscope by making a down payment of $37 plus P monthly payments of $16 each. Which of the following equations represents the situation? So the payment in total is $165, and that is broken up between a down payment of $37 plus P monthly payments of $16 each. So I take $16 times P, and that's the equation that is going to represent this situation. Now we can reorder that. Obviously, all of these equations in my options have 165 on the right-hand side and have my variable on the left-hand side, but we can just swap sides there. And we can swap orders between 37 and 16p. So if we were to write this with 16p plus 37 is equal to 165, that is the exact same equation that I have up here, just in a slightly different order. And that's the answer to question 5. 16p plus 37 is equal to 165. So that's option D for the answer. Question 6 says if y is equal to 5x plus 10, what is the value of y when x is equal to 8? So in this case, what I would do, what is the value of y when x is equal to 8? I replace the x with an 8. That would give me y equals 5 times 8 plus 10. And when I simplify that, 5 times 8 is 40 plus 10 gives me a total of 50. So when x is equal to 8, y is equal to 50. And 50 would be the correct answer. 50 would be the answer to question 6. Question 7. The bar graph shows the distribution of 419 cans collected by 10 different groups for a food drive. How many cans were collected by group 6? So we look at the groups, there's 1 through 10. We're looking for group 6. That's obviously right here. And visually, we look at the height of that bar. The height of that bar goes up to 40. And therefore, group 6 collected 40 cans. And so the answer to this is just 40. It says how many cans were collected by group 6? That's 40. That's question 7. Question 8. The table gives the distribution of votes for a new school mascot and grade level for 80 students. If one of these students is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a student whose vote for new mascot was for a lion? So what's the probability, essentially, that we pick a student who voted for the lion mascot? We're going to use the classical or empirical probability calculations. You can think of this as the same, where since we're picking a student at random and there is a total of 80 students, we're picking out of 80. That is going to become my denominator. And then I need to read how many of those 80 voted for the lion mascot. And of those 80, 20 voted for the lion mascot. 9 in 6th grade, 2 in 7th, 9 in 8th. That gave a total of 20 people who voted for the lion mascot. So 20 out of 80 is the answer. However, we would want to simplify our answer, and 20 out of 80 simplifies to 1/4. So option C is the correct answer. The probability of picking a student whose vote for the new mascot was for a lion is 1/4. Question 9. We're given this graph. It says the graph represents the total charge in dollars by an electrician for X hours of work. The electrician charges a one-time fee plus an hourly rate. What is the best interpretation of the slope of the graph? Well, the one-time fee would be essentially where your line hits the y-axis. So the y value of the y-intercept would be the one-time fee. The slope of this line, since x is talking about hours of work and y would be the charge in dollars, every time we move up by 1, we increase a certain dollar amount. Up by 1, increase a certain dollar amount. So the best way to interpret the slope of this line is that it is A, the electrician's hourly rate. Each time we increase by an hour, we go up by a certain amount. That's the hourly rate of pay of the electrician. And therefore, A, the electrician's hourly rate, is the correct answer to this question, to question number 9. Question 10. Square X has side length 12 centimeters. The perimeter of square Y is 2 times the perimeter of square X. What is the length in centimeters of one side of square y. I always like drawing a picture anytime I have objects, geometry objects that I can draw a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and paste that right here. So we have two squares. One is double the perimeter of the other. Now we know that one side of square x is 12. That means the perimeter of a square is just the side length added up 4 times, or 4 times the side length. So the perimeter of x is going to be 4 times 12, which is 48. If the perimeter of y is 2 times that, then that means the perimeter of y, I'll just call that piece of y, is going to be 2 times 48, and 2 times 48 is 96. Remember, perimeter is the length of all 4 sides, so that means 96 is equal to 4 times the side length of square y. And if you divide 96 by 4, you get that the side length is 24. So the side length of square y is 24, and that's option D. So D, 24, is the answer to question 10. Question 11. What is the equation of the line that passes through point 0.05 and is parallel to the graph of y equals 7x plus 4 in the xy plane? If we want an equation of a line, a lot of times what I do is I use slope-intercept form. This is nice. What type of slope do I want? Well, I want my slope to be equal to 7 because it's going to be parallel to this line, which I know has slope 7. It already is in this y equals mx plus b form, where m is the slope, b is the y value of the y-intercept. So because parallel lines have the same slope, I'm going to use an m of 7 for the line I'm trying to find. We have y equals 7x plus b. B is the y value of the y-intercept. 0, 5 is a y-intercept. And so 5 is going to be the value of b. If you didn't know that, or if you were given another point, you could have just plugged in that other point in for the x, y value. So if I did that, if I plugged in, for instance, 0, 5 into the x, y values corresponding, you'd plug in 0 for x, 5 for y, and then simplify and see that b is equal to 5. And so the equation of that line that we're looking for is y is equal to 7x plus 5. And that means the answer to question 11 is option B, y equals 7x plus 5. Question 12. In the linear function h of 0 is equal to 41 and h of 1 is equal to 40. Which equation describes h? Well, we can actually do this a very similar way that we did the previous problem. Notice that h of 0 is 41, so we know it goes through the point 0, 41. H of 1 is 40, so we know our equation goes through the point 140. We know it's linear, so it's going to look like y equals mx plus b, or h of x is equal to mx plus b instead of, if you don't like to write the y. So we have to find slope and we have to find the value of b. Well, in this case, we can find slope by using the slope formula, the y value of 0.2 minus the y value of 0.1 divided by the x value of 0.2 minus the x value of 0.1. So the change in y over the change in x. And if we look at the change in y, we'll start with 40, that's the y value of the second point, minus 41, that's the y value of the first point. Then we divide by 1 minus 0. And essentially what you get is -1 over a +1, which is -1. So we have slope of -1. And we can see that 0,41 is the y-intercept. So when we plug in 0, we get 41. That means the b value is 41. So that means the equation of the linear function is going to be h of x is equal to -1x plus 41. You don't have to write -1x. You can also write that as -x because it's an implied coefficient of 1 if you don't see it. And that is the final answer that matches up with option A in question 12. So question 12 has answer A, h of x is equal to -x plus 41. Question 13. The function f of t is equal to 60,000 times 2 raised to the power t over 410. Gives the number of bacteria in a population t minutes after an initial observation. How much time in minutes does it take for the number of bacteria in the population to double? So if we want to double, we want to go from 1 to 2. We want to multiply by 2. Okay? So doubling means multiply by 2. So if we start at 0, f of 0, we end up at 60,000. All right? So plugging in 0 gives you 60,000. So we need to figure out, what do we need to plug in to get 60,000 times 2? Well, it's pretty obvious in this case that since we have 2 raised to this power of t over 410, that's going to be equal to 2 when t over 410 is equal to 1. And that means we're going to get t equals 410 as the t that I want. So when we've gone through 410 minutes, then we get a multiplication by 2 and our 60,000 doubles. You can always check that by plugging in 2. I'm going to plug that in here. Excuse me, plugging in 410. When you plug in 410, you get 60,000 times 2 to the 410 over 410. And sure enough, you get 120,000. So that's just a check that I did. The real answer is 410 because that makes this 2 raised to a power equal to 2. So 410 is our answer to question 13. Question 14. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x is the result of translating the graph y equals f of x up 4 units. What is the value of g of 0? So basically what's going to happen is g of x is equal to translating the graph up 4 units of f of x. That means I'm going to take my f of x and then I'm just going to add 4 to it. What is the value of g of 0? Well, g of 0 is going to be equal to f of 0 and then plus 4. So all I have to do to find g of 0 is plug in 0 into this function and then add 4. So we'd get 0 minus 6 times 0 minus 2 times 0 plus 6. And then after I do that, I add 4. So we end up with negative 6 times negative 2 times positive 6 plus 4. And when that's all calculated, that's a 76. Therefore, my final answer is that g of 0 is equal to 76. So that's question 14. Question 15 says, a candle is made of 17 ounces of wax. When the candle is burning, the amount of wax in the candle decreases by 1 ounce every 4 hours. If 6 ounces of the wax remain in this candle, how many hours has it been burning? So basically, we're going to create an equation that says the amount of wax in the candle is going to be starting at 17, and then we're going to lose 1 ounce every 4 hours. If I go lose 1 ounce every 4 hours, that means I'm going to take away 1/4 of an ounce every hour. And so the equation that I get there is 17 minus 1/4 times H is equal to W. That is the amount of wax left. H is hours, W is wax left. Now it says if 6 ounces of wax remains, for how many hours has it been burning? Well, if 6 is the amount of wax, we go 6 is equal to 17 minus 1/4 times H. I can subtract 17 from both sides and get negative 11 is equal to negative 1/4 H. And then I can either divide both sides by a negative 1/4 or multiply both sides by a negative 4 and get my final answer, which is 44 is the number of hours that that candle has been burning. So 44 is equal to H, and that means my correct answer is D, 44. That's the correct answer to question 15. Question 16. The equation relates the numbers J, K, and M. Which equation correctly expresses K in terms of J and M? In other words, what it's asking me to do is to solve and get K by itself. So I need to get K by itself on one side. The way I would do that is I would start out with my equation and I would subtract 14j from both sides. When you do that, you'll get 5k is equal to m minus 14j. In order to solve for k, we would divide both sides by 5. So I'd end up with m minus 14j, all divided by 5 on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, I would just end up with k. So now I've solved this for k. I'm going to go look at my options to see which one this is. Well, this is option A. Option A is k equals the quantity m minus 14j, all divided by k. So option A is the correct answer to question 16. Question 17. Triangle FGH is similar to triangle JKL, where angle F corresponds to angle J. Angles G and K are the right angles. If sine of F is equal to 308 over 317, what is the value of sine of J? Well, never hurts to draw a picture, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture for this scenario. So there we go. FGH similar to JKL, where G and K are the right angles, and then F and J match up. So if F and J match up, that means that these two triangles could be different sizes, but the angle measurements for F and J are going to be the same. So the angles for F is going to be equal to the angle for J. So the angles, I shouldn't say for, the angles F and J are the same. We have that scenario. And that means if I have sine of J, well, that's going to be equal to the same thing as the sine of F, which we just said that the sine of F is 308 over 17. That's what's given in the problem. So since we get 308 over 317 as the sine of F, and F and J are the exact same angle measurements, then sine of J also has to be 308 over 317. And this is what we're asked for. What is the value of sine of J? Well, since J is equal to F, sine of F is equal to sine of J is equal to 308 over 17. And that's option B. So B is the answer to question 17. Question 18. The product of two positive integers is 546. If the first integer is 11 greater than twice the second integer, what is the smaller of the two integers? Now, you can kind of guess and check if you'd like, but that's harder to do. What we'll do is we'll use the algebra. We'll call x and y the two integers. If the product of those two is 546, then we have x times y equals 546. If the first integer, I'll call that x, is equal to 11 greater than twice the second, twice the second would be 2y. 11 greater than twice the second is 2y plus 11. And so what I can do is I can take that x equals 2y plus 11 and replace the x in the product equation with 2y plus 11. So that's going to be x times y is equal to 546. Y is y, and then x I replace with 2y plus 11. This is an equation that I can solve for y. So multiply that out. That would give me 2y squared plus 11y is equal to 546. Subtracting 546 from both sides would give 2y squared plus 11y minus 546 is equal to 0. Now what I would do is I would try to factor this left-hand side. We know it's going to be 2y plus a number multiplied times y plus a number if I factor it. So I just have to see what those numbers are. And these two numbers that we're going to plug in here have to multiply to give me negative 546. And they have to be such that when I plug them in and expand out my polynomial on the left-hand side, I get 11y as my middle term. I know, so just kind of guess different factors of negative 546. And it turns out the factors that we want are positive 39 over here, and then a negative 14 over here. Then we can use the zero factor property and set 2y plus 39 equal to 0 and set y minus 14 equal to 0. The first option gives me, when I solve it, y equals negative 39 over 2. The second option gives me y equals 14. Now, the only one that I can use is actually y equals 14 because it says the two integers are positive. So the product of two positive integers is 546. And so y equals 14 is the answer there. Now, if y is equal to 14, take 2 times 14 plus 11. That would tell me that x is equal to 2 times 14 plus 11, which is 28 plus 11, which is 39. The smaller of those two is the 14. So we have y is 14, x is 39. The smaller integer is 14. And so 14 is the answer. It's asking for the smaller of the two integers. Therefore, B, 14, is the answer that I'm looking for. So the answer to question 18 is B. Question 19. Which point xy is a solution to the given system of inequalities in the xy plane? So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to plug in this point into both inequalities and see if it works for both inequalities. So let's start with negative 14, 0. If I plug that into my first inequality, I would get 0 less than or equal to negative 14 plus 7 is going to be a negative 7. That is actually false. So we know that A is not going to be the point. Again, I'm just plugging into the first inequality first, and then if that were true, I'll go on to the second. There's no need to go on to the second if my first inequality is already true, or it's already false. So for B, We're looking at 0.0 negative 14. Let's plug that into the first inequality. We'd get negative 14 less than or equal to 0 plus 7. So that's true. And now I can move on to the second inequality and plug in 0, negative 14 into the second inequality. We'd get negative 14 greater than or equal to. When I plug in 0 onto the right-hand side, negative 2 times 0 minus 1 is a negative 1. That is false. So since one of the inequalities does not work, 0, negative 14 is not a solution to this system. So not a solution. Let's plug in 0, positive 14. If I plug in 0, positive 14 into the first equation, I would get 14 is less than or equal to 0 plus 7, which is just 7. That's false, so I can stop right there. So the point in A, the point in B, and the point in C do not work. Now at this time, we know D is going to be the working option because the other three don't work. But just for the sake of completeness, let's plug in 14, 0 into both inequalities. If I plug in 14, 0 into the first inequality, I get 0 less than or equal to 14 plus 7, which is 21. That's true. And into the second inequality, I end up with 0 greater than or equal to negative 2 times 14 minus 1 gives me a negative 29. And that's also true. Oh, I forgot the or equal to. So greater than or equal to. So since plugging in that point gives me a true statement in both inequalities, D is the final answer. D 14, 0 is a solution to the given system of inequalities. So D is the answer to question 19. Question 20. What is the smallest solution to the given equation? We have square root of x minus 2 quantity squared is equal to 3x plus 34 underneath a square root. So the first thing I would do is I would square both sides. That would give me x minus 2 quantity squared is equal to 3x plus 34. This is the brute force way of doing this. When you square x minus 2, you need to think of it as x minus 2 times another copy of x minus 2. So I'm going to rewrite that here. And then you're multiplying binomials on the left. We'd get x squared minus 2x minus 2x again, and then plus 4 on the left-hand side, equaling 3x plus 34 on the right-hand side. I'm going to do two steps at once. I'm going to subtract this 3x from both sides, and I'm going to combine like terms. When I do that, I end up with x squared. I'll have minus 2x, and then a minus 3x. That gives me minus 7x. And then I'll also subtract 34 from both sides. So we get minus 30 on the left-hand side. Hopefully you followed along with that. Now I'm trying to solve this quadratic equation. Again, I'm going to do factoring. And if I want to factor x squared minus 7x minus 30, I need to do x plus some number times x plus some other number. And the numbers need to multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 7. And so the numbers that I'm going to look for are negative 10 and a positive 3. That's the two numbers that I want. Those two multiply to give me negative 30, add to give me negative 7. Set each term equal to 0, x minus 10 is equal to 0, or x plus 3 is equal to 0. And this gives me two options. One is x is equal to 10. The other is x is equal to negative 3, excuse me. You can confirm that both of these work by plugging them in to this equation up here. Both of them do work. And so since 20 is asking me for the smallest solution, well, the smaller of those two options is the negative 3. So x equals negative 3 is the smallest solution to the given equation. So negative 3 would be the answer to question 20. Question 21. The regular price of a shirt at a store is $11.70. The sale price of the shirt is 80% less than the regular price. The sale price is 30% greater than the store's cost for the shirt. What is the store's cost for the shirt in dollars? So 80% less essentially means I'm going to take the full price of the shirt, which is going to be 100% of the price, and then I'm going to subtract 80%. So 80% less means that we're taking 20% of the regular price. All right. So let's calculate that. If the regular price of the shirt is $11.70 and the sales price is 80% less, then the sales price, which I'm going to call S, is going to be 20% of $11.70. So the sales price is equal to $2.34. Now, in a similar way, the sales price is 30% greater than the store's cost. And again, 30% greater is going to be equal to 100% of the store's cost plus an additional 30% above the store's cost. So that's going to be 130% of the store's cost. So it says the sales price is equal to 30% more than the store's cost. I'll call that C. So that is S equals 1.30 C. We know that the sales price is $2.34. 234 is equal to 1.30 times C. So we can divide both sides by 1.3 to get the cost of the shirt, the store's cost of the shirt. Dividing both sides by 1.3 gives me $1.80. So that means what is the store's cost in dollars for the shirt? You type in 1.80. $1.80 is the store's cost for this shirt. So 1.8 or 1.80 is the answer to question 21. Question 22. A sample of oak has a density of 807 kilograms per cubic meter. The sample is in the shape of a cube where each edge has a length of 0.9 meters. To the nearest whole number, what is the mass in kilograms of this sample? So even if you don't know how to calculate mass, realize that we're looking for kilograms, right? So we're going to take 807 kilograms per cubic meter. Think of this as kg, 807 kilograms per 1 cubic meter. And we're going to have to multiply times something. I'll call that some volume. And we're going to have to get kilograms. So I say volume because volume is going to be in cubic meters, right? So we're going to have to find the volume in cubic meters of this cube and plug it in there. So if you look at the volume of a cube, that's one of the formulas that is provided on the test. I'm saying that the volume of a cube is just length times width times h, but we know a cube, in the case of a cube, length, width, and height are all the same. L, W, H are all the same. So we're looking at this picture here. Volume is length, width, height, which in a cube, length, width, and height are all the same. So that means the volume of this cube is going to be 0.90 meters times another copy of 0.90 meters times another copy of 0.90 meters. So volume is going to be 0.90 cubed, which is 0.729. So that's what we're going to get, and that's going to be in cubic meters, just so that we're all on the same page. So now if we have the density of the object times the volume of the object, I can take 807 kilograms per 1 cubic meter, and multiply that times 0.729 cubic meters. That's the volume of the oak cube. And that'll give me a certain number of kilograms. And that will be, when I multiply it, 588.303. It asks me to round to the nearest whole number. So to the nearest whole number, well, that's 588. So 588 is going to be the mass of this oak cube. So A is the final answer to question 22. Question 23. For x greater than 0, the function f is defined as follows. F of x is equal to 201% of x. Which of the following could describe this equation? Now, you can write this out. F of x is equal to 201% of x is 2.01 multiplied times x. Even though this is dealing with a percent, the percent is just always 201 times x. And so this is a function which is increasing because we have a positive slope here. So this is a linear function. And that linear function is increasing because of the positive slope. We're multiplying times x. So this is an increasing linear function. And that's it. So D is the correct answer. Increasing linear is what I was looking for. Question 24. The rational function f is defined by an equation in the form f of x is equal to a over the quantity b plus x, or x plus b, doesn't matter how you say that, where a and b are constants. The partial graph of y equals f of x is shown if g of x is equal to f of x plus 4, which equation could define g? Let's start out by figuring out what f of x is, and then we'll worry about g of x. So we want to find f of x first, and it's giving us a piece of this rational function. What I would do is I would notice that this rational function has a vertical asymptote at x equals -4. And that means this is f of x has a vertical asymptote at x equals -4. This means f of x is going to be the fraction a over, and then you get x plus 4. If you have a vertical asymptote at x equals -4, that means if you plug in -4, you're going to get a 0 in the denominator. So that's what we get. And then you can see some points that this goes through. It goes through the point -7, -2. It goes through the point -5, -6. Goes through some other points that are harder to see. But since it goes through the point 7, -2, I'm sorry, -7, -2, that means if I plug in -7 into this function, I should get out a -2. So that means when you plug in -7 in for x, your corresponding y value would be -2. We can solve that. That becomes -2 is equal to a divided by -3, which means a has to be 6 after I've multiplied both sides by a -3. So this tells me what my f of x is. My f of x is going to be equal to 6 divided by x plus 4. So that's what f of x is. Now the question was looking for g of x. So let's be very clear. G of x is equal to f of x plus 4. That's what the function gave me. And when I plug in x plus 4 into my f of x, I just replace this x with an x plus 4. Let me state that a little bit clear. Replace the x with x plus 4. And so that becomes 6 divided by x plus 8. So that's what g of x is. G of x is equal to the rational function 6 divided by x plus 8. And now we go back and look at our options. And it's pretty clear that option C is the correct answer because that's the only one that has g of x equaling 6 divided by x plus 8. So C is the answer to question 24. Question 25 says, which expression is equivalent to y plus 12 over x minus 8 plus y times x minus 8 divided by x squared y minus 8xy? This is an interesting one because there's multiple ways of doing it, but I'll try to show you the most efficient way. The denominator here has x's and y's and lots of stuff in it. It's actually easiest, this problem is easiest if you notice, if you notice what that second fraction can kind of turn into. So the first fraction is y plus 12 divided by x minus 8. The second fraction is y times x minus 8. So y times the quantity x minus 8 divided by x squared y minus 8xy. So I'm going to copy that expression. And I'm going to say that notice this second fraction, we can rewrite the denominator by factoring out a copy of x times y. When I do that, I'm going to lose a copy of x and lose a copy of y in both pieces. And I end up with this. Now, if I wanted to add two fractions, I need common denominators. So what I'm going to have to do on this first fraction is I'm going to have to multiply both the top and the bottom by an xy. The denominator here already has a copy of x minus 8, so this doesn't need anything else. But over here, we'd have to multiply this fraction by a fraction of xy divided by xy. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to distribute xy times y. That's x times y squared. 12 times xy is plus 12xy over xy times x minus 8. Since all of my denominators have already been multiplied out, I'll multiply that out as well. That's going to be x squared y minus 8xy. And then plus, let's multiply these out. Y times x, that's x times y, minus 8y, divided by x squared y, minus 8xy. So notice I have the same denominators on each of these fractions. So I can just add the numerators. Xy squared is its own term, but I can combine 12xy with 1xy and get 13xy. The minus 8y is its own term. And then the denominator is that common denominator of x squared y minus 8xy. So that's the way I see it. You can also have seen it by realizing that I could have left this denominator alone on the right-hand side and multiplied times xy, top and bottom of the first fraction. But this is my final answer. X times y squared plus 13xy minus 8y, all divided by x squared y minus 8xy. And if you look up to the options, that's option C of 25. So the answer to question 25 is option C. Question 26. Table shows the results of a poll. A total of 803 voters selected at random were asked which candidate they would vote for in the upcoming election. According to the poll, if 6,424 people vote in the election, by how many votes would Angel Cruz win or be expected to win? So they pulled 803 and they want to expand this out to 6,424. So if you expand this out, what you would do is you'd say the Angel Cruz votes are going to be equal, that the projection anyways, is going to be equal to, well, since Angel Cruz got 483 out of 803 in the poll, you would multiply that times however many people voted, 6,424 people voted, and the projection for Angel Cruz votes would be 3,864 if these percentages held up. Now, you can do the same thing for the Terry Smith votes. Terry Smith, if these percentages hold up, would get 320 out of 803 votes, and that's going to be out of a total population of voters of 6,424 voters. That comes out to 2,560. Now here's the key. We're not asking for how many votes Angel Cruz is going to get. We're asking by how many votes would Angel Cruz be expected to win. That's the difference between these two numbers. So if we take 3864 minus 2560, you would end up getting 1,304. That's how many votes that Angel Cruz would win by if this projection held up. So 1,304 is the correct answer to problem 26. And that is option B. So B, 1,304 is the correct answer. Question 27. The graph x squared plus y squared plus y equals 199 over 2 in the xy plane is a circle. What is the length of the circle's radius? Now, in general, a circle can be written as x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared, where hk is the center of the circle. And that's set equal to r squared. So the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to radius squared. So all I have to do is transform this equation into this one to figure out the radius. Now there's other ways to do this as well. If you have the ability to graph this circle, then that's perfectly fine, and you can look at the graph. But this is what I'm going to do. This is the option that I'm going to do. X squared plus x. To make a perfect square, I'm going to have to add another number. And then we have y squared plus y. To make a perfect square, I'm going to have to add another number. Is equal to 199 over 2. And if I add a number over here, I'll have to add it on this side. If I add it here, I'll also have to add it on this side. Now, what do we know about a perfect square? X minus h squared. Well, when I do this, I'm looking for h. H is actually going to have to be half of the coefficient of x. Since this coefficient of x is 1 right now, that means h is going to have to be we're going to have to get x plus a half. And when we square a half, what we would have to do is we would have to add 1/2 squared to the left-hand side, which is 1/4. So we're going to add a 1/4. And this x squared plus x plus 1/4 is the expanded out version of x plus 1/2 squared. Then I do the same thing for the y's. We're going to do y minus k squared. What does this k have to be? Well, I'm going to need a plus 1/2. So my k is going to be negative a half. But I'm going to get y plus 1/2 because I'm looking at the coefficient of the y, having that, and then I'd have to add 1/4 again to both sides because 1/2 squared is 1/4. And this y squared plus y plus 1/4 is the same as y plus 1/2 all squared. So what I did is I've done 2 completing the squares to give me that left-hand side of the equation. The right-hand side would simplify to 100. And that means the radius squared is equal to 100, which forces the radius to be 10. I can only have a positive radius. So radius would be 10. And that's the answer to question 27. The radius of this circle is 10. Like I said, you could also do graphing and see what this looks like, find the center of the circle, and then sort of measure on a graph. That concludes Module 1 of the SAT practice test number 3, or at least the math portion of that. There is a link to an explanation of solutions to the other math module, that is Module 2 of this practice test, in the description of this video. There's also a link to a playlist of the other math portions of SAT practice tests as well. So if you want to look at Module 2 for practice test number 3, or Module 1 or 2 of any of the other practice tests, there's links to that in the description of this video. I hope you have good luck on your test.